The Big 12 and the SEC get together in New Orleans for the Sugar Bowl. This time it's Ole Miss against Oklahoma State. We bring in Thomas Fleming from Cowboys Ryan for Free to help us break it down, especially from the Cowboys side. Thomas, thanks so much for joining us for a first time.
Thank you for having me, Mark.
So, for Oklahoma State, 10 consecutive wins to start the campaign. They ran into a couple really strong teams down the stretch, especially that game in Bedlam, 58-23, trying to right some wrongs here in postseason play. Let's start from the quarterback position. Obviously, Mason Rudolph accounted for a ton of touchdowns at 21 against 9 picks. J.W. Walsh, though, had to step in Bedlam. Where do we stand between those two in the injury situation?
Well, Mason Rudolph right now is questionable to probable. Head coach Mike Gundy has said that he expects him to fully recover and start in the Sugar Bowl, but that is yet to be seen. He's out of his boot. He looked good in practice today. They're already in New Orleans. So he is expected to start, but you, as a fan and as an outsider, you'd have to be weary until you actually saw him start. And he played in Bedlam one series, and he really wasn't fully healthy, and it showed. He didn't perform well. And that series ended in an interception. So he is still coming off of that injury, and hopefully he'll be healthy. If he's not, then you look at J.W. Walsh. He has over 24 total touchdowns this year, but that was in a red zone specialist kind of role. He struggled when he's had to take over at that quarterback every down position. So we'll just have to see how the Cowboys work with that dual quarterback system. But either way, head coach Mike Gundy has said that he will probably use Walsh at least for about a half of the game. So we'll see him in good dosages either way.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the stats are eye-popping for J.W. Walsh at 68%, 13 touchdowns throwing and 11 rushing. But again, that's situational football in the red zone. When you look at this entire offense, Thomas, your thoughts about facing a top 10 to 15 defense nationally in regards to your comfort level for the Cowboys right now and what you saw late in the season?
Well, when J.W. Walsh was the actual starting quarterback in 2012, they had a slew of very talented receivers. The problem is with Walsh being at quarterback, they had trouble getting it to those receivers. And I see this being a similar case. Ole Miss has a very good defense. They're 56th in total defense. They're 27th against the run. Very good, especially in that 4-2-5 base defense. Great at stopping the run, but 98th in passing defense. They're giving up over 250 yards per game through the air. So if the Cowboys, hopefully if Rudolph comes back and he performs well, they'll have a good chance if he can move the ball through the air, which he has proven time and time again this year. But if he is out or he has still having problems with that foot, then you move to Walsh, which unfortunately they'd probably have to move to a run-based offense, and that would struggle against a talented Ole Miss front.
Yeah, you mentioned the passing game, Thomas, and we do bowl previews all over the place, and you see with most of these teams, one guy who gets targeted a ton of times, and then you see a large drop-off in production. But with the Cowboys here, James Washington, 52 catches, over 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. David Glidden with 53 receptions. Marcel Aitman had 40. A number of guys with 20, 25 receptions. So the pass distribution is going to be difficult for the Rebels to key in on one or two particular guys.
Well, the Cowboys are fortunate enough to have a lot of talented receivers. Yes, you mentioned you have Aitman, Washington, who's really come into his own in his sophomore year. Glidden in his senior season, really starring in that slot role. And then you have people like Jalen McCleskey, the freshman, Juwan Seals, a lot of talent at that receiving position. The key is just getting it to those players.
Hey, Thomas, looking at the Ole Miss offense, Chad Kelly did throw it for 12 interceptions, so he puts it up for grabs at times. He's a boom or bust kind of quarterback who threw for about 3,700 yards. Not a big running game, not the Leonard Fournette, Derrick Henry type SEC back. They like to spread it around to a number of guys, including Jalen Walton, but the receiving core is exceptional. Your thoughts about the Ole Miss offense and the challenges that they bring?
Well, I don't see the running game being a huge problem. Chad Kelly, he has 10 rushing touchdowns on the year. Jalen Walton, their running back, he's had only 100-yard game, and that was against Vanderbilt back in September. So I don't see the running game being a huge factor for Ole Miss. Their passing game is something to really look at. They have 2,000-yard receivers in Adeboyjo and, of course, Laquan Treadwell, very talented receivers. And obviously Chad Kelly. And watching this offense, it's that Hugh Freeze offense, and co-offensive coordinators Matt Luke and Dan Werner have done a really good job in putting a base plan in place. And they really don't have a whole lot of base plays, but the key is they have a number of different options within each play. They have packaged plays. So on any given play, Kelly could hand it off, he could keep it, he could throw to an attachment or a screen, or he could go to Treadwell, who's usually isolated. So it's a very tough defense to defend against. So I would say their scheme is what makes the players better. Talent-wise, they certainly have it, but if you can make Kelly struggle a little bit just in the early going, he seems to keep that struggle as a theme throughout the game. He's had a number of interceptions in those losses against Florida, Memphis. So if you can get him sometimes on the move, you can move the pocket with players like Emmanuel Ogba or Vincent Taylor. You can collapse the pocket and make Kelly throw into some tough areas and make some bad decisions.
Cody Corin, DeMario Stringfellow, also exceptional complimentary guys, and Evan Ingram, regardless of the numbers, with 32 receptions ever since he stepped on campus, one of the better pass-catching tight ends in college football. Thomas, your thoughts about the Oklahoma State defensive play? I know in having a couple of your cohorts on a regular basis, Gerald Tracy, also Robert Wetzel, looking back a few years ago, a really solid Big 12 defense with a number of all-conference performers that you lost most of last year and took a step back and only winning 7 games, and then the bounce back this year. So your thoughts about the Cowboys defense?
They certainly have talent. In those last 4 games, really, I believe they played over 360 snaps. I don't go live and die by that number, but it's something like that. They played a number of snaps, just a whole lot in the latter part of the season, because the offense was either hit or miss. And that's really been Oklahoma State's issue on offense. It's really all or nothing at all. So the defense, either way, if the offense scores quickly or if they go quick 3 and out, the defense is on the field a lot. And in those last 4 games, it showed. They got real tired. Fatigue got into a serious issue, not only in each game individually, but from week to week. And you could see it in the Baylor and the OU games. They got just flat out tired and they broke down. So hopefully now with the defense, gaining their legs back under them, hopefully fatigue won't be an issue and they can really show that talent. They have a lot of talent, obviously. Ogba up front. They have an underrated linebacking core with players like Jordan Burton, Chad Whitener, and then their secondary is obviously strong too. You have Kevin Peterson. Hopefully, some people see him as an NFL draft pick in this upcoming draft. You have Ashton Lampkin, and then 2 solid backups in the Indiana transfer Michael Hunter and the sophomore Ramon Richards. So their defense has talent, but fatigue obviously distorted those numbers in the latter half of the season.
Thomas Fleming joining us from Cowboys Ride for Free on the Oklahoma State platform from SB Nation. Thomas, the amount of attention and importance given to bowl games scans the spectrum from exhibition game to this is the game that people remember in the off season. Obviously, this is a New Year's Day 6 game. It's very important from the standpoint of national attention. If you're watching college football on New Year's night, you're watching the Sugar Bowl, and that is the one time that a college football team can actually say that there's no competition for viewing, and it's a Big 12 SEC matchup. So Oklahoma State getting to these type of games very infrequently, the Stanford game and the Fiesta being the most recent. Your thoughts about how Cowboys Nation views this game and the importance?
I think Cowboy Nation sees it as a big game. I think the Big 12 Nation sees it as a big game. Anytime the Big 12 plays an SEC team, people will watch and pay attention, and beat writers will focus in on it, because this Big 12 SEC rivalry has been going on for a while. Big 12, a lot of people don't think that the SEC respects this conference. And so anytime they can play the big tradition boys, players really get excited about that, and teams get excited. So I see that being big on that end from Oklahoma State's end. It's a huge game. Last year, they went 7-6. They struggled, but with a win in Bedlam and a win against Washington in the Cactus Bowl, the momentum was really, really high going into the offseason, and it helped a ton with recruiting. The optimism was up. Now, coming off of 2 losses against Baylor and Oklahoma, it's not looking good. It's hurting recruiting, definitely. They've lost a number of recruits, big-time recruits in the past couple of weeks. So this game is huge from a national perspective, and from a perspective of getting that momentum back on track, moving toward the 2016-2017 season. So it's a big game to put the season off on a high note.
Hey, Thomas, before we let you go on a similar path, while we're right there, this conference a bit disrespected at the end of last season, as evidenced by many in regards to being snubbed by the College Football Playoff Committee, comes into this season regarded as possibly the worst conference, maybe the ACC, but by a lot of national pundits gaining respect because TCU and Baylor were expected to be elite, but Oklahoma jumping up there, Oklahoma State as well. Just your thoughts about how the league performed, how strong, taking off your Big 12 hat to a certain extent, how strong you believe the league is, how important postseason play is, considering that there were very few elite games outside of the conference for us to gain any kind of measurement.
I thought the Big 12 performed fairly well. The injuries have been huge this season. A lot of the marquee matchups kind of got dulled down because of injuries. Trayvon Boykin got hurt. Seth Russell got hurt. Mason Rudolph got hurt. Those are the 3 out of the top 4 teams. It left Oklahoma to really have a whole lot of success in the latter half of the season. But I thought they did well. Looking forward to later years, scheduling is going to be a big focus. The Big 12 now requires each team to have certain fulfill certain requirements. For example, you have to play a Power 5 team, and you can have no more than 1 FCS opponent per year. So hopefully that will help how people view them from out of the conference. But I thought they performed well. They had good teams. They were offensively driven, of course. I mean, it is the Big 12. Quarterback injuries hurt that, but I think they did well, and hopefully they'll be able to perform well in this bowl season, because last year they were dead last in conference performance in postseason. So hopefully they can right the ship there and get some national attention and some respect from the other conferences and the people in the College Football Playoff Committee.
It's Ole Miss and Oklahoma State for bragging rights between the Big 12 and the SEC. The winner, a probable top 10 finish as well. Thomas Fleming helps us set us up from Cowboys Ride for Free. Thomas, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you for having me, Mark.